Welcome. You've made it. You're here. Somehow. You're watching. This video is part of the tarot series that I'm doing on YouTube on the Infinite Weird channel. And the last episode I talked about the Wheel of Fortune card. And, you don't have to watch that. You don't have to watch this. You don't have to watch any of these videos. But I'm glad that you are watching this. And, if you are interested and you do like these videos, then you should... It would give you more context to watch the video that comes before each one. Because I'm doing it in order. In the Major Arcana cards, I'm on the 11th card in the Majors now. And I've done some videos leading up to this. And so it might be more enriching to watch them in order to gain perspective and context. But hopefully, regardless of whether you've watched the previous video or not, you will still get something out of this video. I think you will. So, just to briefly recap, I'm not going to recap the whole Fool's Journey at this point. I do, as others, there are several people who think about the Major Arcana cards in the tarot as the Fool's Journey, because the Fool is the 0 card in the Majors, and it's kind of interesting to think about the Fool as the character who is kind of moving through all of these cards, who is moving through all of these stages or these steps or these levels or chapters in this whole voyage, this whole transformation. You could think about it as a transformation of self-realization. You could think about it as self-actualization, or both. You could think about it as ultimately a journey of self-transcendence. It seems like the first 7 cards in the Major Arcana are trying to kind of build up the self in a healthy way. And then the 7 cards after that are kind of trying to deconstruct the self, you could say. And the final cards, among other things, the final 7 of the Majors are kind of trying to... I would say, especially since the very last card, card 21, is the World card. And so I would say it's like, after you deconstruct the ego or something like that, you are now seeing what that means for continuing to live in the world. Continuing to live in the world without being so self-absorbed, and with new insights, and with a more holistic perspective, and with more balance and integration within yourself and all this stuff. There's so many ways to think about it. But at this point, we're on card 11, so we're still in the second leg of 3. If the Majors are broken up into 3 legs of 7, we're on 11 now. And in the last video, I talked about the Wheel of Fortune, which I find useful to think of as the vision that the Hermit card has when the Hermit card goes into the darkness with his own light, to look at everything fearlessly and to discover the truth about himself or herself or their self. And the truth about, truths, I guess. Truths about themselves, truths about reality, and truths about the world and the universe as a whole. Now, the Hermit has this vision of the Wheel of Fortune, which is a vision that sees things from a bigger perspective and realizes how everything is interwoven and interdependently connected, and realizes that, like the butterfly effect, if anything in our individual life was changed in the past, then this moment right now would be different than it is. And if anything was different about, on a more cosmic level, if anything was different in the past, then the present would be different as well. So the Wheel of Fortune is seeing things from a wider perspective, recognizing all of the factors that make us who we are. On a personal level, realizing that every little detail from the past has launched you here, right here as you are in this moment. And the Justice card comes after the Wheel of Fortune, after we've had this vision, after we've had this insight, and seen kind of the inner workings of ourselves and the universe to see how everything is connected. And, in this card, the figure is sitting in between two pillars, which is somewhat of a callback to the High Priestess. The High Priestess is also sitting between two pillars, but in the High Priestess card, she is sitting between a black and a white pillar. And in here, in this card, this figure is sitting between two gray pillars. And so that represents to me that there's a certain level of dualism that has been transcended. It's no longer black and white. Both pillars are gray. There's balance. There's this emphasis on, at the end from an absolute perspective, there really is no boundaries or dualism between the big and the small, between the mundane and the sacred, between our personal dharma, our personal calling, our personal existence, the things that we are driven to be and to do in this life. There's no distinction ultimately from between that and the big dharma, the flow of reality itself, the Tao. And the Wheel of Fortune touches on karma, I think, because from one perspective, karma is just the law of cause and effect. So now that we've seen the causes and their effects, we realize that reality is the way that it is, and to act like it's not right here in this moment, to act like reality is not what it is right now, is doing disservice or injustice to reality itself. So to do justice to it, to see the justice. So to do justice to it is to see it as it is, and to realize that everything that allows this moment to be what it is, that allowance is a form of justice too. Some spiritual folks talk about how everything is perfect. And I know that some people bristle at that, understandably, because obviously there's tons of suffering in the world. But when somebody says, everything is perfect, I think what they mean, depending on who it is, obviously, but the way I think of that when I hear that, is that everything is perfect in the sense that everything is exactly how it is right now. Everything is how it is. So to accept what is to say that everything is perfect, because it can't be another way than it is right now. Now, to accept reality as it is, and to say that everything is perfect because it can't be another way than it is right now, the way that it's allowed to be from all the infinite number of factors that make this present moment what it is, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't desire to transform ourselves or to transform the world, to relieve suffering for others and to increase well-being for ourselves and others, and to call out injustices in the world and to try to make the world a better place. I know that sounds corny, but why not? Why not try to make things better? Now, I know that that's tricky territory from a spiritual perspective, but in my mind, it doesn't have to be so tricky. It's okay to have those kinds of intentions. And so to accept reality as it is does not mean to not intend to transform things that you feel like would be more, would honor the sacredness of life more if they were transformed. That's okay. And then the act of transforming becomes what is, the act of the act of changing something, the act of changing yourself becomes what is reality. I hope that makes sense. I know some of that's abstract, but I also want to say that obviously a lot of people who break down the interpretations of tarot cards often resort to things like astrology, to things like the Kabbalah, esoteric symbolism, and those sorts of things. And that's totally cool, and I respect that. But for me, I'm not super, super duper drawn to astrology. And I've read some books about Kabbalah and the tarot, and I'm interested in the Tree of Life and Jewish mysticism, as well as Sufism, and basically any form of mysticism. But when I'm trying to unpack the significance of a card or trying to communicate the significance to somebody else, generally speaking, the people I'm talking to, it's going to be too much and too overwhelming to bring in tons of jargon and tons of astrology and Kabbalah connections and stuff. So I'm trying to kind of interpret these cards and communicate my interpretations. Obviously, I'm making references to certain traditions and terms and stuff, but I'm trying to be fairly accessible and grounded. And if you are interested in, if you hear something I say and you would like to hear more about that, then leave a comment and let me know. So let's see. If you can't embrace and accept reality in this moment, then it's going to be hard to make any situation workable. But as Trungpa once said, he said every situation is workable. And I love that. And to me, that takes a certain flexibility, openness, kind of this willingness to see things from multiple points of view, which I think is seen in the Wheel of Fortune and in this card. It's balancing your points of view, being compassionate. I think another implication of this card is that once you do see that everything is interwoven and you see that you are interdependently connected to an infinite number of things that allow you to be, then you also realize the dignity and worth of every person. You realize that each person's inner life and experience and everything about another person is just as valuable and as real as you are, especially to them. Their world is just as vivid as your world is to you. Every human shares similar, there's such a wide range of human situations and what people are born into and what people's life circumstances and hardships are. But nevertheless, we share so much. We do have a lot in common. And it's important to see another person's humanity, of course. It's stupid. And ultimately, it's always going to cause unnecessary suffering. If what we do to others we're doing to ourselves, then when we dehumanize somebody else, we're dehumanizing ourselves. We honor somebody else's humanity. We do not objectify them or dehumanize them. We see them as equally worthy, valuable, and important as us. Sounds corny, but it's true, and that's part of seeing the interdependence of all things. So that's an element of this card too. Compassion. Perhaps this card is where compassion starts coming in to the major cards here. Let's see if I'm leaving anything out here. I think those are the main points I wanted to make. Obviously, there's the sword, and I mean, different people have different interpretations of what the sword really means in the tarot. I think about the sword as dealing with our mental life, and also I think it deals with action. And so perhaps the sword is about how the relationship between our thoughts and our actions, our inner world or mental world and our actions. And so if the Wheel of Fortune is kind of this vision and this inner insight, then maybe one way to read this card is to say, well, how are we going to do justice to that vision? How are we going to bring more justice into the world and toward ourselves because of our new awareness of interdependence and the wheel of life, and how everything, kind of having more intuition and clarity about the patterns of reality and the patterns that make us who we are, and our own patterns, our own habits, and how can we kind of, maybe make a lot of people when they talk about this card, it's about like taking action and taking our new realizations into action. And it's kind of this test of saying, are you ready to actually act on this? Are you ready to act on that new awareness? So I think that's part of this card. And, it kind of almost, for some reason, some of this reminds me of Neville Goddard and how he talks about forgiveness, and forgiveness being forgiveness and repentance in the context of when we imagine ourselves as our highest self, or imagine ourselves as our highest potential, and truly feel that, and then in consequence start gravitating and embodying and manifesting that higher potential, that in itself is a form of forgiveness and is a form of repentance or atonement, at one-ment. We are becoming more at one with our higher potential. And so, yeah, I think that's where I will leave it on this card. What are we going to do with the new realization of interdependence and a new realization of how every single factor that makes us who we are, and even just on a personal level, all the things in our past that bring us to this moment, and how we have to accept that, and by accepting it, we work with it. Sartre said, freedom is what you do with what's been done to you.